From the Journal of Dr. Liara Spencer on the Study of the Dreamtime. Entry 3. Breathe. Just breathe. That's what I told myself. There, in the darkness. I didn't even know if I was conscious or not, but I told myself to remain calm nonetheless and breathe. I often meditated when I found myself stressed out, and I was most certainly stressed out at that moment. So I took a breath, and then, for good measure, I took one more. This did the trick. I felt the panic within me slowly recede and be replaced by a sense of calm, at least until I opened my eyes. Then that good old panic came right back and made itself at home. I was in a cave, lying on the ground in front of a large roaring fire. On the walls were what looked like old cave paintings depicting various scenes, and giant shadows danced among them. Actual shadows dancing on the walls, on their own. I would have been fascinated if I wasn't so terrified. I shot to my feet and started backing away slowly as I watched the dancing shadows, like animated figures moving to and fro across the walls. If I didn't know any better, I'd say they looked happy frolicking about. I found myself falling into a trance watching them. Fascinating, isn't it? Said a voice behind me. I whirled around to see Magi sitting there, cross-legged on the ground by the fire. Was he always there? I hadn't noticed him before. But then again, all I noticed were the cave paintings and the dancing shadows. Speaking of which, they were no longer dancing happily. They were now cowering in fear, visibly trembling. I noted this was unusual, but thought it must have had something to do with the appearance of Magi. "Where am I?" I asked. "What have you done to me?" "Nothing, except to bring you here," he replied. "No, you did more than that," I said. "You drugged me and brought me here against my will." "It wasn't against your will. This is what you wanted," he said. He then pointed to the shadows on the wall. I looked and saw them, no longer cowering, but instead in a threatening posture. They looked frightened. Then I heard Manjara's voice from behind me. "Imagine a cave where people have been imprisoned from childhood, but not from birth. These prisoners are chained so that their legs and necks are fixed, forcing them to gaze at the wall in front of them. Behind the prisoners is a fire, and between the fire and the prisoners is a raised walkway with a low wall. The people walk behind the wall so their bodies do not cast shadows for the prisoners to see, but the objects they carry do, like puppets in a show. The prisoners cannot see any of what is happening behind them. They are only able to see the shadows cast upon the cave wall in front of them. The sounds of the people talking echo off the walls, and the prisoners believe these sounds come from the shadows. That, Miss Spencer, is the Dreamtime." "Plato," I said. "The Republic." "Yes," he said, those ancient eyes of his looking straight through me to my core. He continued, "This cave was the meeting place of the dreaming ancestors. From here, the first concepts of the Dreamtime were born." He waved a hand at the cave paintings all around. The shadows were now standing motionless, the way a soldier stands to attention. In hindsight, I can see now they were mirroring me. "One could even say the Dreamtime was born right here, on this very spot," said Magi as he walked back towards the roaring fire. I felt a sudden surge of excitement at hearing this news. The shadows had once again begun to dance happily. Could what he said possibly be true? That the Dreamtime itself was born here, in this cave? That the dreaming ancestors once stood where I was standing now? The implications, the data. My mind was racing, but I of course had to verify all this to be true. Then there was the little matter that Magi had essentially drugged me and kidnapped me. I had to put aside my excitement and think rationally for a moment. Everything he said could be a lie, and even the dancing shadows could be a parlour trick of some type. I had no idea where I even was. "Magi," I said, "I will need to verify all this. If you would kindly show me the way out now, I will forget the manner in which I was brought here, whether I wanted it or not." Minjara chuckled. "To think, Magi sent you all this way to try and find a way to stop your missing dream wakened, never knowing they had the power to do so all along." "What exactly do you mean by that?" I asked. He gestured at the dancing shadows again. "Notice how the shadows react to your emotions. When you are excited, they dance happily. When you are afraid, they cower. When you are listening, they stood to attention. It's because they are your shadows, your creations." "My creations? Do you realise you're talking to someone who can barely draw stick figures?" I asked, only slightly exaggerating. Minjara cracked the first smile I'd seen from him since we first met and said, "I told you earlier that a new dreamtime must be built upon the knowledge your soul will convey to us. As before, this cave will serve as its birthplace, with you as its mother. That is why you were brought here." Now I was beginning to worry. It's quite possible that old age had finally claimed Minjara's mind and he was having some sort of episode. It was time to get out of there, now. "Minjara, please, if you could just show me the way out. If you want a way out, make one," he said harshly. "If you truly believe that stick figures are all you're able to create, then here you will remain. If, however, you realise you are capable of creating so much more, then a new world awaits. That is your test." Minjara walked towards what appeared to be a dark passage. "What am I to you, Minjara?" I asked, with a mix of growing panic and anger. He stopped. When he spoke, his voice echoed his response. "The answer to that question awaits you if and when you find your way out of here. There, your real journey begins." He then walked into the dark passage and disappeared. I sprinted after him, calling his name, only to be greeted with yet another unbelievable sight. There was nothing outside the room I was in, nothing but blackness, a void, an emptiness. All that existed was the room with the fire, the cave paintings, and those shadows, those damn shadows, which cowered once again, reflecting my terrified feelings. This couldn't be real. I must still be unconscious, right? Either that or I was fully awake but suffering from the effects of whatever drug he gave me, a hallucinogen no doubt. Whatever the case was, I had to focus. I had to gather my thoughts and let facts guide me as they always have. I was on assignment and I had a job to do. The ramblings of an old man possibly suffering from dementia who had just committed an actual crime would not stop me from completing it. "Breathe, Liara," I told myself, refocusing my mind. Just breathe.